Dare great things for Christ. Christ calls us to dare great things. In the marketplace, as well as in the mission field, there has never been a time like the present for the spirit of the Catholic entrepreneur. Now is the time for men and women of great courage and great vision to engage our church and our culture. Now is the time to dare great things. And here is your host as we dare great things, Father Nathan Cromley, the president and founder of the St. John Institute.
In some ways, all leadership is the same. Individuals have to move groups of people to accomplish things in unity. What then is the Christian difference? And what does a religion of love have to do with leadership? In this fourth part of our series on the Christian leader's advantage, we explore the difference that love makes in leadership. Not only does it speak to the emotions of all involved, but it allows leaders to penetrate more deeply into what really motivates people to be their best. And being the best of all things, why wouldn't love make us the best of all leaders? Hey everybody, I'm so glad to be back with you again. We're going to continue our series here on the Christian leader's advantage. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want you to realize that your faith being brought into the workplace is not just something that's going to be beneficial for your souls, or your faith being brought into your parenting, or your faith being brought into whenever you have to lead other people. This is not just something that's going to try to bring them to eternal life, which is, of course, extremely important. But at the same time, it has a distinct advantage for what we're trying to do at a very practical level. I mean, faith transforms the way that we look at reality, and therefore the way that we approach the situations of our life. And it does so by making us wise. Here's what we mean precisely. We mean that it makes us see the world through God's eyes. So what most Americans do today is we say, okay, that's all religious stuff. That has nothing to do with my practical life. But saying that is just a statement of profound ignorance. I mean, you have to forgive me, but how can you say that looking at the world through the eyes of the one who created the world would not have the most profoundly positive consequences on the way that we approach the world? I mean, if you wanted to understand how a car works, you would speak to the manufacturer of the car. No one knows the specifications of the car better than the engineers who designed it, who could tell you exactly how it's supposed to be used, how it could be used optimally, etc. Well, in the same way, when we're looking at the human heart and the human situation in our world today, who could be better placed to guide us than the one who created all human beings, right? And we who are believers, we have the advantage of listening to him. Now, what would happen if my leadership took for its starting point not just human wisdom, not just, human way of looking at things, but God's own plan for the human person? Well, obviously, we would have all kinds of things that would happen. The structure of what we're doing wouldn't change. We still have to motivate individuals, right, to do things, to get things done as a team. We have to make good plans. We have to make good processes. The structure of things wouldn't change. But how we did them and what we came up with, the answers to the questions that are in front of us, these we hope would change. Actually, we can almost guarantee they would change, because we're going to find answers that are deeper, that are more profound, that are more meaningful than anything we could come up with on our own. And this is why we need to do it. I mean, what an amazing opportunity we have to work together with God at the work that we have to do. There's absolutely no reason to put that on the side. I mean, I get it. We say today, well, we don't want to impose our faith on other people. And I can understand that. I'm not saying to impose your faith on anybody. I'm saying to lead from your faith, to make the faith the source of what you're doing, and to not be ashamed of the wisdom and the knowledge that God came to give us and that our faith can provide us, thinking somehow or other that if we're believers in our leadership will be the weaker for it. No, on the contrary, I can guarantee you, our leadership will be the more effective for it, because when we lead from faith, we lead with God's help. And what's even more, we allow God to use our leadership to shape the world according to his will. And honestly, I think that this is a real blessing. Do you really think that you could do the world more good than God? right? Like, I mean, because many of us we don't want to bring God into the workplace. I'm like, you're depriving the workplace of God and of his blessing when you refuse to take him there. Why would we do this? This doesn't make any sense at all. If you really loved your work, if you really loved your world, you would make God more present in it, not less. Now, again, I get it. We might not be able to invoke his holy name. We might not want to make our faith explicitly present there because, well, out of respect for the diversity of the people that are there. And I understand that. I appreciate that. The church goes with you in that. But at the same time, we do not have to allow the effects, of God's blessings to be withheld from this world that needs them so badly, just because we do not wish to impose our faith in an explicit way in our workplaces. We don't have to make our faith there explicit, although it's a fine thing to do. We can, in fact, though, make it powerfully present by living out of it, by basing our own decisions in leadership from a perspective that flows from the faith. I mean, I want your heart sanctified in Christ, not just so that you go to heaven, but so that everybody around you goes to heaven too, and that heaven's impact can leave its footprint upon the earth. When we look at the way that business today can be misused in the hands of sinful people to leverage effects of sin that hold people in bondage, that keep the poor deprived, that keep whole nations unstabilized, right? I mean, we can't allow this to happen. If you really want peace in the world, then work for justice. That's what Pope John the 23rd said. Well, if you're going to work for justice, it needs to start by understanding the role of justice within business. And you won't find that role maintained. What else it will be the curb of greed if it's not going to be faith? What else could curb selfishness if not faith? What faith does is it puts God above you. And if God is not above you, well, then you are the highest thing in the world. And if you're the highest thing, then you make the rules. Remember that, right? To the victor belongs the spoils, that type of logic. Whoever dies with most toys wins. I like the counterpoint to that says, whoever dies with the most toys still dies, right? That's the perspective that comes from religion, because it says, you're not the arbiter of all truth. You see, but without a religion, without a faith, well, then there is nothing higher than the person who's in power. And there's also nothing else to fulfill the human heart beyond our own selfish ambitions. And the beauty, the counterpoint to this is to say, no, there is a God. And that God has sent me here in order to bring about his rule in the world. And by bringing about his rule in the world, I bring about a place of fulfillment, of happiness, of justice, of equity, that doesn't come from my own selfish ambitions, but that comes instead from God's very plan for the fulfillment of all creatures. And I get the joy of harmonizing with God and resting in his peace as I bring that peace into my workplace by creating the unity of order wherever I am, the order that God himself made. And of course, this benefits everybody, including myself, and it opens myself and our world to a perspective, a dialogue, of fraternity, of cooperation that uplifts the poor, stabilizes nations, etc. I mean, we could go on and on about it, but I just want you to become so convinced, because you're the ones in the workplace. And when you allow atheism to be flowing through you, and respect to everybody, respect to all atheists out there, but when you allow that perspective to flow through you, you're depriving the world of the beautiful blessing that could come from allowing God to do his work through you and living this world as if God wanted to make an impact through you instead. And so to do that, the very first step is to become convinced of the value of the gospel with respect to what you have to do each day. And that's with respect to your leadership. I want you to see that there's an advantage that comes from following Christ into leadership. So we've already talked about several of these advantages, from the forgiveness of sins to the perspective of eternal life. And I want to focus on today of the reality of the power of love that we bring into the world through our leadership, and that our leadership itself can benefit from.
Would you like to hear more from Father Nathan? Join the St. John Leadership Network and receive a 2-minute glance at the gospel every Sunday morning right to your phone. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
So the Christian leader is not like anyone else, okay? Leading out of faith and the perspective of faith gives us a different optic through which we can look at the situations that are around us. And we all know that when it comes to Christianity, the foundational tenet of Christianity is that God is love and that God has commanded us to love one another as he has loved us. All right, so now most of us say, okay, that's a very nice thing. That means I should hold hands with my family when we say grace. It means that we should go to mass together and afterwards, go and visit grandma. And that's about it, right? Because most of us aren't used to really putting our faith at the center of our lives. So it's a good thing. I mean, I'm glad you're there. I'm glad that you have faith. I'm glad that you're moving forward the best way that you can. Any step forward is still a step forward. I just want you to take the next one. Because even though it's a great thing to want love and to have love, seen as being important in your life will be as great as the intensity of divine love is in your soul. Okay, this is a truth that's hard for us to swallow because it sounds so extreme. But think about it really concretely. If everything that we do for other people flows from the way that we love them, the more that I can love them like God, the infinite lover of all human beings, well, then the greater my relationships are going to be. Okay, the more that God is alive in my soul, the more that I will be able to give myself beautifully, well, and without limit to the people that are around me. All right, so in other words, I will be as great as the intensity of divine life is in my soul. That will be the quality of my life. As you love, so you live. Well, as you live, so you impact others. So now if you put those two together and you say, the more that I have God's love in my life, the more that my life will be full and my impact will be deep. All right, so immediately you see why this is so important for us in our professional lives. Because when you're working in the workplace, you're associating with people with whom you normally would not associate. I mean, outside of work, few of us maintain relationships with our colleagues. And this means that God has us in situations 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day with people that we wouldn't necessarily choose to associate with otherwise. What does this mean? It means it's a unique opportunity for us to be able to do good for people who might not have sources of goodness or people who really care for them elsewhere in their world. I remember speaking with a business that works in manufacturing, and I was talking with the leadership team of that company, and they were really concerned that their company be impactful for the good of the families of the workers. So they gave free food to the workers who came to work for them. Why? Because they said for some of them, this might be the only really safe and healthy meal that these people can eat throughout their day. So they wanted to provide food for their people simply because they wanted their people to be able to have that stability to be able to put their lives in a good way going forward. They owned the business, they were Christians, and they said to themselves, our Christian business can work like Christ by providing the people that work with us with a healthy, safe, calm meal once a day. Now, that's just an example, right? But that comes, if you think about the many people that you work with, you might be the closest influence that they have to God. Just because you're Christian, don't take for advantage the fact that everyone else, is. You might be the only thing that speaks of God, that reminds them of God in their daily life. And the impact of that is enormous. I'm thinking, for example, of a story from a woman who ran a Chick-fil-A restaurant in a city. And she said that she always gives the homeless people who come into her restaurant tickets so that they can go up to the counter and order food with the dignity of ordering their food. So the homeless would come to her place and she would always instruct their people to feed them by giving them these tickets and allowing them to pay, so to speak, for their food. And so one person in particular would come every single day into this restaurant, and the woman would take care of them. And many of the people were saying in her restaurant, listen, don't take care of this person anymore. They're here all the time. You're creating a dependency. But she said, listen, what else can I do? This is the best thing I could do for this person. They're hard of luck. I'm going to give them this because it's my restaurant and I'm a Christian and I'm going to do it this way. Well, in the end, tragically, that person one day was hit and struck by a vehicle crossing the road elsewhere in town and came to their demise. The restaurant owner didn't know this, of course, until the family of the homeless person came to visit her and said to her how touched they were and grateful they were for the care that they gave to their family member. Turned out the family member had voluntarily chosen to live on the streets, refused any help from anyone. But whenever the family would ask, how were you eating? He would speak about the kindness and the generosity of this restaurant that was keeping him alive. And the family wanted to thank her for that. At the time she chose to do this, who knows how long this would have gone for. People were criticizing her. And yet God didn't want her to do it for 20 years. He just wanted to do it for 2 months so that his son would not go without food while on the earth. Now that's an example of a Christian leader. You see, there's a different perspective on things. I don't just have a restaurant just to make money. I don't just have a restaurant just to provide for my customers. I also have a restaurant to make sure that everyone that I interact with in this day can receive the food that is their right, coming from the Creator. Now, obviously you can't do this too much or whatever, but you can do it to the degree that's proper and that you can. But that's only if you come at it from an attitude of faith, like this woman. Because not only did she give him food, but she gave him food with dignity. Because she was operating out of her faith with the love of God. And the impact that made on the man wasn't just that he was fed, but that he was fed with someone who cared for him. This is the Christian difference, right? This is the Christian advantage. Our world is blessed when we can use the positions of power that God has given us to bless others, not just on the outside, but from the inside. And this can be done when our hearts themselves are engaged in what we do. I want you to think about all the people that you work with on a daily basis and ask yourself this question: what if I was put there for a deeper purpose than just to work with them? What if I was put there in order to encourage them, to smile at them, to give them levity, to remind them of happiness and holiness in life? I'm just reminded of that expression by Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who left the poverty of Calcutta, where people are dying on the streets, etc., to come to New York City. And after visiting New York City, she said, I believe that the people in America are poorer than the people in India. Not because they lack things on the outside, but because they are lonely and sad on the inside. And we think to ourselves, my goodness, how many of my colleagues are going through their day with no hope? Literally wondering if there's a God, wondering why they're on the earth. Man, can't we bring love into that environment? Of course we can. And of course we need to. And of course we're called to. Why? Because we are the body of Christ in the professional world. And we do this when we bring our faith into our hearts and we allow love to be present in the decisions that we make. And so we make Christ present through the workplace.
Would you like to start your Thursday mornings with a scriptural leadership lesson? Join the St. John Leadership Network, where Father Nathan hosts a 30-minute call at 6:30 a.m. in all 4 U.S. time zones. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
So one of the ways that our faith really benefits us in our leadership is that it allows love to make its impact through us in the lives of those who are around us. But I want to emphasize that impact is not just emotional, right? Because a lot of us get turned off by that. We say that love is something that's way too personal for the workplace. And so we prefer to redefine our working relationships outside of the perspective of the heart. And I'd say, okay, on one hand, that's appropriate, right? Because there's definitely a much higher level of boundary when it comes to our working relationships. And yet I want to challenge that perspective at the same time and say, well, if love is not present at work, then what is? I mean, there's never going to be a vacuum with respect to the principles that are governing our behavior in the place of work. So if it's not love that's governing our decisions, then what is? Greed? Competition? Selfish? Ask yourself, What is it that's actually allowing me to set the proper boundaries in the world of work if it's not love? And I'm going to guarantee you that whatever that thing is, it is less advantageous and beneficial for the people than love. I mean, is it selfishness? Is it drive? Is it carelessness? Is it coldness? I mean, I don't know. But when you go and look at it logically, the Christian call to be loving in our leadership is also the call for Christians to give our fellow workers and our customers and our investors and the world blessed by our products or services the very best of things. Nothing will produce better work than someone who brings love into their work and works out of their love. And no love is going to be guaranteed to be as strong and as powerful and as fruitful as the love of Christ. Therefore, a Christian possesses in their hands the keys to allowing the world to be blessed by work and in the work in the most advantageous and beneficial way possible. Because the love that our faith brings us to share is the most ultimate form of love. It's the most guaranteed form of justice that there is. But we see this not just like, again, in an emotional way. When we speak about the impact of a Christian in world of work, we can also speak of it in measurable, effective terms. Think, for example, of the way that love would force me as a manager to look for the real good and development of the people that I manage. We all know about the power of leadership development and the importance this has in succession planning and the importance this has in employee retention in the workplace and all this type of thing. But I want to even go a step further with it because the way that we do it matters. I can just give people promotion after promotion, but that's not necessarily the best thing for them. I mean, promotions, of course, are always a good thing, but a promotion that's done with a real sense of aligning their personal identity to their position in the company would be one that would benefit them even more. How much time do I take to really coach, to really advise, to really steer the people that are under me towards a promotion and a place in the company that's going to bring them the most happiness? And when I do that employee development, do I do it in a way that really develops them? I mean, just giving them external skills and skill sets that they need is one thing, but how much more could I work with them to help them in an even deeper way? What about working with the internal obstacles for their success in the workplace? I mean, it's not just necessarily the skills, but there's all kinds of soft skills that the employee can also learn. I can develop them with if I care enough to try. And this, again, gives it an advantage because we all know our businesses will be as effective as the people who are running them and who are in them. And so my advantage as a Christian is that I'm bringing love to the table, which means my development of my people goes deeper, is more extensive, and is truer than anything I can do simply superficially. All right? Love resists superficiality. And so a loving business owner is one who really works for the development of their people. A loving manager is someone who really works to develop their team from the inside. And what will that have as an effect? It'll have greater profit, greater profitability, greater efficiency, fewer errors and mistakes, and greater job satisfaction for employee retention. Okay, but like without looking at just from those effects, the real motivation of it is that also this: we will find our own purpose in our work more deeply. I've spoken with so many folks that work their whole life. You come to the end, you're in your 60s, you're looking to retire, and you're saying to yourself, what was it all for? What's the real legacy of what I was doing? Wouldn't it be wonderful to not want to stop working because you found such purpose in your workplace? I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful that if our people begged us to not retire because they didn't want to go to work without our being there? How do we become that kind of leader? The leader that sees their work as their gift to God and as the thing that they've bequeathed to the world at the end of their career. Like, this is something I'm proud of and I've signed off on, and it's something that I will be the less for not being able to engage in it. I regret having to retire to a certain degree, because this is something that really is my gift to the world. Well, only someone who's learned to put love into their work will be able to leave a legacy that is deeper than the economic impact that they were able to reap from what they did. And I'm thinking also of all the lives that are positively impacted by great leaders, from the lives that are impacted when you take the time to really put your employee first as a person, to put them first in a deeper perspective than just what they produce for you each day, but to see what you're doing as a way of lifting them up and bringing them to a better place. I know one company that we work with at the St. John Institute where they have a date night for the families of their workers, meaning that they don't just want the workers to be positively impacted at work, they want them to bring the values of the workplace even into their home. And so we've actually had the opportunity for the workers to come to a dinner put on by the company where we were able to speak to them about the values of the company impacting their family life. And the surveys at the end of this were amazing. The families coming back saying that this was so impactful to help them in their parenting, in their marriages, in their way that they live out their family, and how grateful they were for it. We didn't even speak about faith in a real overt way. We instead really focused in on the values of trust, the values of relationships, and the importance of their family, and the people were benefited by it. That's from the leaders who themselves said, we don't just have this company to provide jobs, we have this company to help provide people with the guidance that they need to be the best versions of themselves. This is the power of leading with love. The power of the Christian business leader is the power of someone who allows their faith to impact their world in measurable ways by allowing the love that faith inspires to be as real as the jobs and the positions of the people who are under us. Let's therefore love in truth, love from the heart, and let's love in our leadership.
Dare great things for Christ.
Share your feedback with Father Nathan. Send us an email at communications@stjohninstitute.org. That's communications@stjohninstitute.org. And visit www.stjohninstitute.org and sign up for our newsletter to receive updates from Father Nathan.